Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, all of us have stories about what compelled us to run for the legislature. My story really began many years ago, actually long before I was born. I am the son of an immigrant. My mother, who was 6 years old at the time, and my grandfather came here from Russia. They were Volga Germans that were the ancestors of Germans that immigrated to the Volga region in the mid-1700s. My grandfather served in the Russian army. He told of the story and the talk that was going on at the time that there was likely going to be a lot of trouble in their country. So many of them immigrated to the U.S. As a result, they came here in 1912 and landed in Philadelphia on April 14, 1912, the day the Titanic sunk. The Bolshevik Revolution happened in 1917, and Russia went communist. That always intrigued me over the years because I was always curious what the circumstances were for those that were left in Russia. My mother had a sister there that stayed there with her grandmother with the intention to have her come later. My mother never did see her sister again. After World War II, my relatives that were left in Russia were either driven into Siberia or Kazakhstan, killed or forced into labor camps. Anyway, that formed the basis, that was the basis for me to form a very personal connection to the freedoms that we enjoy from living in America. America does truly allow us the opportunities to improve our condition if we're willing to work for it. My father, a rabid Truman Democrat, was a farmer at heart. However, it didn't work out, so he finished his work career by working for a farmer. And in the sugar beet factory during the campaign, which was the period that it took to process all of the sugar beets, harvested sugar beets, into sugar, usually about 60 to 70 days. Needless to say, our economic condition was not at the top of the heap. Most of the year he worked 60 hours a week for another farmer at $1 an hour. My mother, who couldn't read and couldn't write, but she had a great deal of influence in my life, much of which I didn't really appreciate until I left home, got married and had a family of my own. My mother tended 2 gardens, canned vegetables, did the laundry, and always had a fresh baked loaf of bread, butter, and some strawberry jam for us when we got home from school. I mentioned my mother because she gave me many things, including the love for hard work and a deep love for this country. So looking back on it, I guess I was born into poverty. But then the government, that was before the government had established the poverty line, so we really didn't know we were in poverty. We had no running water in the house until I was a senior in high school. And I was the youngest of 6 in the family. So it wasn't all that great for any of my siblings either. It was a situation that if I wanted to go to college, it would have to be by the sweat of my brow. I had the opportunity to work in the oil fields on construction, and finish out the evening at a service station washing windows and pumping gas. Yes, gas was 29 cents a gallon. I married my high school sweetheart, and we started down the path of life together. We came to Iowa 52 years ago with a 1-year-old son. Who was born in my 3rd year of college. During college, I worked at a service station, the one with the star, the big bright technical star. Cleaned restrooms and did janitorial work at the athletic field house. We intended to come to Iowa, gain some experience, and then go back to the mountains. Since then, we have sunk our roots in Iowa. Our children are here, most of our grandchildren are here. It only took about 15 years to get used to not having mountains on the horizon, but eventually it does happen. Here I worked in the electric and gas utility industry for 31 years, serving the public. I was proud to work in an industry that tried hard to keep the lights on 24/7, 365. It was enjoyable work, and they had an opportunity to work in virtually all the operating departments. My proudest accomplishment was to found the Shoreline Railroad in Council Bluffs that has been the catalyst for huge economic growth there. Representative Seek could fill in some details about that. After retiring early, I decided to run for the legislature in 2002, seated in 2003, and the rest is history. I've always been one who believed in limited government. In the words of one very wise person who responded when asked how people should be governed, he said we should teach the people the correct principles and they will govern themselves. Since I came to the legislature, we have added about 2 volumes to the code. As the size of the code grows, our freedoms are constrained along with it. We passed some onerous licensing laws, including electrical and plumbing. No sooner had we done that when one of the organizations that pushed it so hard was back wanting to be exempt from them. Observations from my time serving here, most of the time it was a truly enjoyable experience. I reflect on some advice that I heard when I was first elected to the legislature. I was told there will be a bold title put on you. People will call you honorable. Will give you all sorts of compliments. Lobbyists will make you feel special and will curry your favor. All of that will make you feel very good, but I just have one piece of valuable advice. Don't inhale. What was my biggest disappointment? Several years ago, Scott Racker, our Appropriations Committee chair, asked me if I would take a bill to sell the Jackson Pollock painting at the University of Iowa. Sure would. I'm all over that. To bring you up to date, the Jackson Pollock painting was appraised at $140 million at the time. Not knowing anything about Jackson Pollock, I did some research and found he was born in Cody, Wyoming, about 30 miles from where I was born. One of the proposals was to sell the painting, pay for a brand new art building, and in addition use the funds to offer a four-year full-ride scholarship to every art student that would ever graduate from any Iowa high school. We couldn't muster the support to do that, but it was really fun trying. University of Iowa would hear none of it. They would rather have the taxpayers fund a new art building, which eventually was done. I have to thank those that have helped me over the past 16 years, my colleagues, friends, and especially my family. My wife of 54 years has always been a supporter, my love and my life. I thank her from the bottom of my heart. my son Doug. Has always been supportive of me. He works at the local fairway, and during campaigns he is always the first to display my campaign signs on his pickup that was always parked in a very prominent place in the store parking lot. He always helped me put up the signs and take them down. My daughter Renee handled my finances and always offered candid help and guidance through my political career. My son-in-law and my two beautiful granddaughters were always there to support me with their t-shirts and their sweet smiles. I would be remiss if I didn't thank the voters of Dallas County and that pearl of a city in northwest Polk County, Polk City. They have supported me through 8 elections and 2 different legislative districts. I always enjoyed my conversations with Representative Bonner. When I was stationed in Council Bluffs and living in Adel, I probably was able to get Clell's autograph more than once when the speed limit was still 60 or 55, and one had to be comatose to drive on the interstate at 55 miles an hour. Clell always had his eye out for the speeders. I especially enjoyed the friendship of my colleagues in the Senate, Senator Bain and Senator Chapman. Senator Bain and I enjoyed many forums together in my former district. 2 of my favorite commentators or columnists are Walter E. Williams and Thomas Sowell. They both are worthy of anyone to follow, but I would share a short commentary by Walter E. Williams. He said this: "We must own up to the fact that laws and regulations alone cannot produce a civilized society. Morality is society's first-line of defense against uncivilized behavior. Moral standards of conduct have been under siege in our country for over a half a century. Moral absolutes have been abandoned as guiding principles. We've been taught not to be judgmental, that one lifestyle or set of values is just as good as another. We no longer hold people accountable for their behavior, and we accept excuse-making. Problems of murder, mayhem, and other forms of antisocial behavior will continue until we regain our moral footing." Judge Robert Bork, one of the finest legal minds this country has ever seen, said it another way. He said, "Our modern, virtually unqualified enthusiasm for liberty forgets that liberty can only be the space between the walls of morality and the law based on morality. It is sensible to argue about how far apart those walls should be set, but it is cultural suicide to demand all space and no walls." People have asked me what I'm going to do after leaving the legislature. Who knows? But maybe I can go to work for Iowa State. I hear they sometimes hire former legislators. Thank you, Madam Speaker.